Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks.
My name is Margaret, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and I've always believed one thing: if you try to control someone's life, sooner or later you'll lose control of your own. I was standing in my own kitchen when my daughter-in-law, Chelsea, slammed her palm on the countertop so hard my coffee cup rattled. "You either cut her out, or I'm gone," she barked at my son, her eyes blazing like she had just caught me committing some crime. My jaw tightened, my heart pounded in my ears, and for a moment, I thought I had misheard her. But no, she was dead serious. My son, Daniel, stood there like a deer in headlights, looking back and forth between us, as if choosing a side in that moment wouldn't change the rest of his life. "Cut me out?" I said slowly, the words dripping with disbelief. "You mean, his mother? The woman who raised him, worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and made sure he could get through college without a cent of debt?" Chelsea crossed her arms, rolling her eyes so dramatically it was almost theatrical. "Oh, please," she sneered, "you think that makes you entitled to run his life forever? We're married now. We make our own choices, and that means no more weekly dinners, no more surprise visits, no more calling him whenever you feel like it. You're smothering him, Margaret." I took a step closer, my voice low but shaking with rage. "Smothering him? Or keeping him from drowning in someone else's control?" Her face flushed crimson, and she shot back, "You're jealous. That's all this is. You can't stand that another woman has replaced you." I actually laughed, a bitter, sharp laugh that filled the room. "Replaced me? Chelsea, you can't replace a mother. You can't buy years of scraped knees, sleepless nights, and sacrifices you've never had to make. You don't even know what it means to put someone else before yourself." Daniel finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Chelsea, Mom. Can we just..." But she cut him off like he didn't even exist. "No, Dan, this is the problem. You never stand up to her. You let her boss you around, guilt-trip you, and act like she owns you. You're 32 years old, for God's sake." I could see the hurt in my son's eyes, but I also saw something else, a flicker of shame. Shame that his wife was humiliating his mother in her own kitchen. "You're right," I said, straightening my back. "He is 32 years old, and that means he gets to decide for himself who he keeps in his life. So go ahead, Daniel. Tell me right now, do I need to leave my own house so your wife can feel in control?" Chelsea scoffed, throwing her hands in the air. "Oh, don't play the victim, Margaret. You've been undermining me since day one. You think I don't notice the little comments? The way you tell him he's too skinny and then hand him a plate of food, as if I'm starving him? The way you roll your eyes when I talk about my career? You're toxic." That word hit me like a slap, not because it was true, but because of how confidently she twisted the truth to make herself the victim. "Toxic?" I said, my voice trembling. "Toxic is telling your husband who he can and can't see. Toxic is making him feel like he has to choose between his wife and his own blood. Toxic is threatening to walk out just to get your way. If that's love to you, then I feel sorry for you, Chelsea, because it's not going to last." Her mouth fell open, like no one had ever dared talk back to her. "Are you threatening my marriage?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I shook my head slowly, locking eyes with her. "No. I'm warning you. Because the way you're treating him now, it's the same way you're going to lose him later. And when that day comes, you'll remember this conversation." Daniel looked at me, then at her, and I could see the war inside him, torn between peace and truth. Chelsea grabbed her purse off the counter, muttering something under her breath, and stormed toward the door. But before she left, she turned back and hissed, "You have no idea who you're messing with, Margaret. I always get my way." Then she was gone, the slam of the front door echoing through the house like a gunshot. I stood there in the silence that followed, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. That was the day I made myself a promise: if she wanted control, she could have it, for now. Because soon, life would teach her a lesson she'd never forget. And I was going to make sure I had the front row seat when it happened. The silence after that door slam felt heavier than the fight itself. My son was still standing in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the floor like he was afraid to move. I poured myself a glass of water just to keep my hands busy, but the truth was, my mind was already racing. I'd seen women like Chelsea before, the ones who smile in public, play the perfect wife, but behind closed doors, they pull every string until the man they're with doesn't even recognize himself anymore. I had promised myself I would never meddle in my grown son's marriage, but watching him just now, frozen in fear of saying the wrong thing, I knew this wasn't about meddling. This was about protecting him. "Daniel," I said softly, breaking the silence, "is this how she always talks to you?" His head jerked up, his eyes darting toward the door as if she might burst back in at any second. "Mom, don't," he muttered. "She's just stressed. Work's been crazy," and I cut him off, my voice firm. Work stress doesn't give anyone the right to humiliate their partner. Especially not in front of their own family. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck like a little boy caught between trouble and loyalty. "You don't understand. If I push back, she'll make my life hell. It's easier just to let her have her way." That sentence made my chest ache. My son, the same boy who once stood up to his high school principal to defend a bullied friend, was now afraid to stand up in his own marriage. "Easier," I repeated, shaking my head. "Easier for who, Daniel?" "Because it's not easier for you. And one day, it's not going to be enough for her that you give in. She's going to want more. And more. Until there's nothing left of you." He didn't answer, just grabbed his jacket and said he had to go smooth things over. I watched him leave, knowing I couldn't stop him, not yet. But as I stood there alone, the same thought kept circling my mind. Chelsea was playing a dangerous game, and sooner or later, she was going to lose. She thought she could control him, but life has a funny way of turning the tables. And when it did, I was going to make sure she faced the truth, whether she liked it or not. A week later, I saw the first sign. It came in the form of a text from Daniel that read, "Can we have dinner? Just us. Don't tell Chelsea." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I knew what that meant. My son was starting to hide things from his wife. That's not how a healthy marriage works, but it is how a controlling one begins to crumble. We met at a little seafood place by the water, the same spot I used to take him after his baseball games when he was a boy. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying a weight too heavy for too long. I didn't push him. I just let him talk. And slowly, the words came out. "Mom, she's not happy unless I'm miserable. If I'm late from work, she accuses me of cheating. If I go out with friends, she says I'm avoiding her. And if I spend time with you, well, you know how that goes." I felt my heart twist. "Daniel, that's not love. That's control." He shook his head, staring down at his plate. "She says she's just protecting our marriage. That she loves me too much to let anyone come between us." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Daniel, people who love you don't cage you. They trust you. If she can't trust you, she doesn't love you, she loves controlling you." Just then, his phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with Chelsea's name, followed by a string of messages. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? I'm coming to find you." Daniel went pale. "I have to go," he said, fumbling for his wallet. But before he left, he looked at me with eyes that were both pleading and ashamed. "Don't call me for a while, Mom. I'll reach out when I can." He walked out into the night, and I sat there staring after him, my dinner untouched. That's when I knew Chelsea was losing her grip, and the more she felt it slipping, the harder she would squeeze. And people like that. They always squeeze until something breaks. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. Daniel had invited me to his company's family picnic at a park downtown. He said it would be casual, just burgers, music, and coworkers. I knew Chelsea would be there, but I also knew she wouldn't dare make a scene in front of his boss and colleagues, or so I thought. From the moment I arrived, I could feel her eyes on me. She was standing beside Daniel with a drink in her hand, smiling that tight, fake smile women wear when they're dying to lash out but want to keep up appearances. I stayed polite, chatting with people I knew, keeping my distance. But when Daniel came over to hand me a plate of food, Chelsea's control snapped. "Seriously, Daniel? You're serving her before me?" Her voice was sharp enough to cut through the music. Heads turned. Daniel froze, caught like a child with his hand in the cookie jar. "It's just a burger, Chelsea," he started, but she was already stepping closer, her face flushed, her voice rising. "No, it's not just a burger. It's every little thing. You always put her first. You call her every time you have a problem. You act like you're still living in her house, not ours. When are you going to cut the cord?" People were staring now. Conversations had stopped. Even his boss was watching. I wanted to melt into the ground, but I stood tall, refusing to let her see me flinch. Daniel glanced around, mortified. "Chelsea, not here," he muttered. But she ignored him. "Why not here? Everyone should know how much of a mama's boy you still are. Maybe then you'd finally grow up." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel's face turned crimson, not from anger, but from the kind of humiliation that burns deep. He put the plate down, took a deep breath, and said nothing. And in that silence, Chelsea smirked like she'd won. But what she didn't realize was that she hadn't just embarrassed him, she'd embarrassed herself. You could see it in the way people avoided her the rest of the afternoon, in the way Daniel's boss gave her a look colder than the iced tea on the table. That was the moment I knew her power was starting to crumble. Because control can only last as long as people believe you're worth following, and Chelsea had just shown the world exactly who she was. It didn't take long after the picnic for the cracks to split wide open. Daniel stopped calling me entirely, but I could feel the change in him through the silence. His boss, the same man who'd watched Chelsea's meltdown, started pulling him aside for private talks. The promotion Daniel had been working towards suddenly went to someone else. He told himself it was just bad timing, but I knew better. No one wants to put a man in charge whose wife might cause a scene at a client dinner. Chelsea's outburst had cost him more than his pride. Then the money problems started. Daniel's voice was tense on the phone when he finally called me one evening. "Mom, she's been using the credit card like crazy. Clothes, spa days, weekend trips with her friends. I didn't even know until I checked the statement. We're thousands in the hole." I kept my voice calm, but inside, I felt that cold, certain understanding. Chelsea's control wasn't about protecting the marriage. It was about protecting her lifestyle. And when the money dried up, her patience would too. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, it happened. Daniel showed up at my house unannounced, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. "She's gone," he said flatly. Packed a bag, took the car, left a note saying she needs someone who can provide for her needs. He handed me the note, but I barely looked at it. Because in that moment, I didn't see my son's marriage ending, I saw Chelsea's world collapsing. Over the next month, the stories trickled in. She'd moved in with a friend, but that friend's husband wasn't too happy about it. She lost her job after missing too many days and showing up late. The credit card debt she'd racked up under Daniel's name? She now had to answer for it in court. All that control she'd clung to, gone. All that power she thought she had, nothing. And the final twist? Daniel got that promotion after all, once she was out of the picture. At the celebration dinner, he looked at me and said, "You were right, Mom. She tried to control everything, and now she can't even control her own life. I raised my glass and smiled. Because some people learn their lessons too late, but they always learn them. And Chelsea? She learned the hard way that when you build your life on control, it only takes one slip for the whole thing to fall apart. Daniel sat across from me that night, the warm glow from the restaurant's lights softening the hard months he'd just lived through. He looked lighter, freer, like the boy I used to know before Chelsea had her claws in him. You know, he said quietly, I thought keeping the peace meant giving her what she wanted. But it just made me lose myself. I nodded, letting his words sink in. That's what control does, Daniel. It doesn't just take away your choices, it takes away who you are. And the longer you give in, the harder it is to remember you ever had a voice. He leaned back, staring at me for a moment before speaking again. I'm sorry, Mom, for letting her treat you like that. For letting her treat me like that. I reached across the table, taking his hand. You don't have to apologize to me, sweetheart. You learned. That's what matters. And the truth is, Chelsea probably never will. People who live for control can't imagine life any other way. They think if they just push harder, manipulate more, they can keep everything in place. But the world doesn't work like that. Eventually, the people they control either break or break free. And when they do, the controller is left standing alone, wondering why their grip slipped in the first place. You can't hold on to people by trapping them. If you want them to stay, you have to give them the freedom to leave. Because love without trust isn't love at all, it's a prison. And sooner or later, every prisoner finds the key.